Welcome to Universal Man, where we turn your flight into fight so that you can master yourself and conquer your goals. My name is Mark Webb, and I'm here to help you sharpen your masculine edge. And in today's video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about this culture of outrage. It's almost more like a cult of outrage that exists today. To put it plainly, I think everybody is way too pissed off about just about everything. And, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of stuff to be upset about today, but the problem is, I think a lot of this outrage and upset that we see is really kind of a sterile, masturbatory, sort of self-gratifying sort of upset where nothing really positive gets done and you just kind of get to get high off this upset. And so basically what I want to talk about is how to not be an outrage zombie and how to fall in love with nuance and, live in truth and reality and still get stuff done. So if you want to hear me talk about that, well, stay tuned. So if you guys are wondering what the heck's back there, it's because I just put together an Instagram post where I went over all the nootropics, the cognitive enhancing drugs that I've experimented with. I'm kind of an addict to that sort of stuff. So that's actually me cleaning out my closet of all the things that are supposed to help me think better and more sharply. So you can go check me out on Instagram where I rate each one of those and give a little thought. And if you want to follow me there, or on Twitter where it's get kind of the same stuff, my handle's right down there. So check me out on social media. But anyway, on to our main topic, this cult of outrage. What is this all about? Well, as you guys know, if you follow any sort of media at all, you know that they thrive off of sensationalism, okay? And the media today, it's not like the media in the past. The media in the past, they could actually, like the thing they were selling, more or less, was they were selling information. They were selling truth-ish, okay? They wanted to provide you with the stories about what was happening, and that's what they were giving you. They were giving you news. But I think the media outlets today are in a different business. They're much more like drug dealers, okay? They're trying to sell you specific neurochemicals. And if they can get you hooked on the right kind of neurochemicals, well, that means more money in their pocket. Because basically, it's all driven by clicks today. It's all driven by clicks. And what are the things that, attract the most clicks? Well, sensationalism, outrage, conflict. And so the media companies, that's what they're incentivized to feed you. They're incentivized to feed you things and headlines that set off a little switch inside you that makes you get worried or pissed off or angry or whatever, because these emotions are easy to trigger. It's very difficult as a news agency, to release a story that immediately grabs you and makes you feel happy and good about the world, or makes you feel pumped up, or inspired, and that sort of thing. Because that kind of stuff is just not as easily accessible. It does those mechanisms inside of your brain, I don't think they are as quick to trigger, because I think our nature defaults to getting upset more quickly than it does to getting satisfied, because getting upset, it's almost like a protective mechanism. It's something that can keep you alive. If you get upset about, that invader who's coming into your village, well, you're more likely to do something about it and avoid getting killed. If that's a kind of evolutionary example of it. So like, we are predisposed to getting upset more easily than being, happy and satisfied. So, the news agencies, this is what they do. They try to trigger this inside of you. And so the most trendy sort of emotion they're trying to trigger today, I think, is outrage. And the reason why I think they're targeting outrage in people, I'm talking media on both sides, they want to target outrage because it does two things. One, it's an impotent emotion. It's something where if it's powerful, it's strong. If they can get you kind of inside your little tribal bubble and riled up and willing to attack or whatnot, then that's intense. And people want to feel stuff. They want to feel stuff. And so there's a negative part where you're attacking someone or you're attacking some situation where oh, that's bad, that's terrible. But then there's also this kind of positive part too. By putting someone else down, by directing your negative energy somewhere else, it kind of sort of makes you feel good about yourself. It kind of makes you feel like, I'm on the good side. I'm on the winning side. I care about something. Maybe I'm pretty virtuous for caring about it this much. Maybe I'd be more virtuous if I cared about it even more, if I got even more upset, if I ranted on Twitter or Facebook about it. Maybe that would make me super virtuous. And, you kind of can get that feeling. You really step into that, and you see people consumed by this sort of thinking. They just get so wrapped up in getting as outraged as possible. And there's popular terms around this, like calling it virtue signaling and victim Olympics and that sort of stuff. But I think that's much more of the right criticizing the left, if we're going to talk it politically. But I think maybe it started out, this outrage stuff started out primarily on the left. Now it's equally on both sides. There's just like butthurt people everywhere going crazy. And it's got to stop. And I think for me personally, I got sucked into this. I still struggle to avoid getting sucked into this. And it definitely peaked for me in the 2016 presidential United States election. Everything with Trump and Hillary and Bernie and everybody involved, it was just like so much craziness smashing into each other. And, I got really hooked into it to the point where, I was getting worked up. I was getting into fights with friends and family. And it just... it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. I mean, it's serious stuff, but the way in which I was engaging in it was not the best way possible. I was losing track of the people in front of me. I'm more interested in being right than being fully informed and actually listening to where the other person was coming from. I stopped having a conversation. I started having a debate where it was a competition. And maybe I could even win the debate, but what does that matter? It just means that maybe I'm more adept at slinging points and, argumentation. That doesn't mean anything about actually being right. It's, if you are right, you should care about trying to share that rightness with someone, and just beating them down and ignoring them or whatever, that doesn't help. But this is what the outrage drug induces in us. And another place too where I've struggled to get sucked into it is this kind of anti-PC culture, because that's a big thing right now, where you have one side, you've got the people who are super PC, it's like, intersectional feminism. And then on the other side, you've got the people who are like, let's just treat everybody as individuals and, not give people special status because of their ancestry or whatever. And so that's a whole big thing, and it's easy to get sucked into that kind of stuff, and there needs to be conversations about it, but I think the manner in which we converse about it really, really matters. So what do I think the solution is to all of this outrage? Well, I think what it comes down to is nuance, okay? I think we have to combat this outrage drug with the understanding drug, that feeling of truth, the feeling of actually obtaining a well-rounded view of a situation. It's not quite like the crystal meth of outrage, if we're going to compare it to drugs. Instead, it's more of like the satisfaction of living a balanced lifestyle. It's like both living a balanced lifestyle and doing crystal meth will lead to feelings of some kind of positive feeling, but they're very different ones. They're different kinds of positive feelings with different kinds of side effects. And so what you have to kind of learn how to key into is sources where you can find nuance. And instead of then relying primarily on clickbait media, short form, very clearly biased pieces that are just designed to spike your emotion, get your click, and then maybe get you to click on some shitty ad. You want to find places where people are having actual discussions, looking at things from, well-rounded perspectives. It's like a war between short form and long form content. And this is why I think in a lot of ways people are gravitating toward podcasts and more in-depth discussions and lectures. The stuff I'm doing now, I don't think would have done as well necessarily in the past, because I think some people are getting really sick of this outrage stuff and they're getting kind of hung over on it, and they're looking for, all right, let's have some real conversation here. Instead of just blindly bashing each other with ideological positions, let's actually figure out what's going on. And this is where you have these people watching like Jordan Peterson and stuff like that, because that guy's the opposite of short form outrage. He's going super in depth, super detailed into things, and he's not like crazy biased on one perspective or another. The only places where he's really kind of aggressive are places where he has tremendous amounts of depth in his argumentation, and he displays all of it rather than just going after cheap emotional wins where he, with straw men and that kind of crap. But there's a problem with going down this nuanced route, and the problem is that it pops your bubble, okay? Like, if you're going to enter into try to approach life through a well-rounded, nuanced lens, well, then very often what that's going to have to do is force you to confront the painful reality that you don't have it all figured out. And I know this because I've gone through it. It's like, if you really want to understand something, you have to look at both sides of any argument. And it's difficult. It's difficult to do that because it takes a little bit more work. It's either you have to do more work to form an opinion, or you have to admit to saying, I don't know. I don't know what the best thing to do is. And neither of those is as immediately gratifying as being, oh yeah, I totally got it figured out. Yeah, no, this is right. You're wrong. Like, you're super wrong and I'm super right. So like, you don't get to have that kind of cheap, easy, narrow-viewed sort of win. Instead, it's more like, well, dang, I thought this one thing, but now I'm not so sure. I hear you talking about this and you got a point, but this person's got a point over here. And then, you go back and forth, and either you end up in sort of maybe some confusion, which I think could be good, or forming a fully well-rounded opinion where you can also account for the other person. So it's not so much like I'm going to bash you with a stick. It's like, oh, I actually see where you're coming from. So, but there is this piece here that you're missing. And so that's a little bit different, and it feels different. So basically what I'm promoting here is that you should pop your bubble. You should pop your ideological bubble. You should pop this tribalistic view of the world where it's you versus them, and instead live in a world of nuance, of shades of gray, okay? And when you do this, when you allow yourself to enter into this place of not knowing and entertaining multiple different ideas, then what's going to happen is that there's going to be that kind of chaos that goes on. And I mentioned this in the last video, and I think it's a really important one. But it's this chaos of letting all these different ideas smash around inside of yourself. And what you have to do at any given moment is you have to kind of take your best effort from that chaos of not knowing or maybe knowing this, but then also maybe knowing that and not understanding this. And you take all of that and you get your best perspective, and then you smash that against reality. You smash that against other people's opinions, and voluntarily exposing what you've got to criticism is what's going to polish your understanding of the world. Because if you can continuously hold an idea up against serious scrutiny from both sides, well, then chances are that's a pretty strong idea, and you can put more and more weight on that. And I think that that's super important, because if you just hold your ideas up to people who agree with your idea, well, you don't really know how good of an idea it is. Find someone who really disagrees with it and see what they have to say about it. And if you find yourself in that conversation getting stressed and worried and defensive, well, maybe they're making some good points, and maybe you don't want to acknowledge that. Again, I'm speaking from personal experience. I know what this feels like. This world needs more people to take that courageous stance, who are willing to take what they know or what they think they know and speak about it, but actually have a conversation about it. Actually be willing to get out there, talk about something, go back and forth, admit they're wrong, but, also hold where they're right or where they think they're right, and force the other person to make an argument about it, to try and prove them wrong. That's what I'm doing in all my videos. I will defend what I say to the extent to which I can defend it. And sometimes I'll even do it rather aggressively, because unless you can overcome what I'm saying, then what I'm saying wins, but I'm going at it with the idea of I want you to try and prove me wrong. I want you to try and attack everything I say. And if you can make good arguments, then I will admit you're correct. I will admit that I screwed up. And if you go back through my comments on my videos, I think you'll see that. I think you'll see where, I admit that I'm wrong, and I'll admit that the other person has a point. But if I don't think they do, then I won't admit that. But there has to be that willingness. And I think the cult of outrage, what that does is it blocks us from doing that. It says, I'm right no matter what. I'm right because this is what I think, and this is what I feel, and there's no room for anything else. And so, yeah, I think this world needs to change in that regard. And I think there's enough people who are hungry for this kind of change that we're going to eventually like enter into this divide. I keep talking about this. I think technology is forcing a divide in humanity to the point where there are going to be people increasingly caught in this bubble, in the bubbles constructed by technology and information technology, like, you know, the people trapped in the bubble of porn and video games and ideological short-sighted thinking. There's going to be people trapped in there, and then there's going to be people free from it, people who are free thinking, who are truly engaging with one another, who recognize like the ills that technology represents. And so make sure you're in that camp, because the people, like the trajectory that I see for the people in the bubble moving into the future is very dark, very bleak, and potentially very dangerous too for everybody involved. So, you know, think big, think honestly, be willing to be wrong, but also be willing to be right and fight for it. So, yep, that's my thoughts. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you did, please like, please subscribe, please follow me on social media, and yeah, stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.